Good morning. I'm delighted to be here at this conference. Thank you so much. It's amazing to see a very, very full audience here. As was mentioned, my name is Raj Dhingra. I am with Tricentis, and I'm here to talk about automation. So it's actually it's a wonderful progression because the first speaker, Rishabh, talked about transformation, right? And then the next speaker, Avinash, talked about AI. So people talk about AI as the new electricity, right? It's going to be something we just expect. Now, just as happened earlier today, electricity can have a brownout. What happens if AI has a malfunction? Maybe you should call it a brainout, right? So the third topic that I'm going to talk about is automation. How many of you are using automation in your work today? Wow, that's amazing. And how many of you were using automation 2 years ago? Okay, wow, this is an amazing audience, right? So, you are familiar with automation. So we're going to talk about automation, and we're going to talk about how it's impacting us in many different facets, right? So let me just have a quick check. How many of you are familiar with Tricentis? Just a show of hands. Okay, we have a few people. Awesome. So just a quick introduction. Tricentis, we're a global software test automation leader. We have offices around the world. You can see that in the blue category. We have a pretty significant presence in India as well, right? We have a very large team that's based out of Pune. We also have quite a few people that are distributed throughout India. I personally am actually based in Silicon Valley in California. So we are a leader in software test automation, and specifically within test automation, Gartner has ranked Tricentis as the leader in software test automation. Not just once, but 4 years in a row. In fact, we just actually got that ranking just about a week ago. So, you can probably get a leadership ranking maybe once, but be able to achieve that 4 years in a row, I really think, it's easy to say, but not so easy to do, right? So it's amazing. So let's talk about automation and how it might be affecting us. So automation, bots in your home. How many of you have some of these gadgets that you may be using for automation? Anybody has an Alexa Echo? Yeah? Okay. Someone's using a vacuum cleaner, Roomba? So Walmart plans to use 360 autonomous robots for cleaning their stores. They're going to actually launch that initiative just in a matter of a few weeks and be using it. There's the iPhone that has now incorporated Siri shortcuts that you can use to actually automate a series of actions. And then, of course, the humanoid robots are coming. So as was being discussed even earlier, the idea of automation can create different emotions, right? It can create an emotion of fear. Personally, from my perspective, when automation works, guess what happens, right? So imagine you wake up in the morning and you tell Alexa, and you can program it to do a series of routines like, turn on the lights, turn on the coffee pot, tell me my news, tell me what's the weather, and a few other things you might want to check. What's my commute to my work? Probably a longer answer in Bangalore, I think, trying to get your commute to work, but maybe not so in other parts of the world. So when that works, the emotion you feel is a smile, right? It's not fear, it's a smile, because when automation works, you say, wow, that's really cool. And I think that's what's going to be happening to us when automation starts to impact us in a majority facets of our life, right? So when you think about automation now from an enterprise perspective, so these are many different factors that are affecting automation in the enterprise. Clearly, many of you raised your hands saying you were leveraging automation today, right? And have been for some time. It's being driven by the leadership of companies saying they want to be on a digital transformation journey, right? They're fundamentally trying to change and transform the culture of the company, but very much driven by what they want to do for their customers and how they want to serve their customers, right? That's the primary driver. The customer experience, maybe it's business reasons like profitability, maybe it's a competitive reason. How can we do better than our competition? What makes us different? Certainly, technologies are playing a very important role. Technologies today, with the state of the art of artificial intelligence today, with the state of the art of the robotic capabilities today, it's very possible to implement automation to a very high degree, And then there are other factors, and we'll cover them when we talk about RPA. But these are the reasons why we're starting to see automation impact the enterprise. Now, the question is, how automated is the enterprise today, right? So here is a recent study that was done by McKinsey. And it's a bit of an eye chart, but the main point is that there is a very large opportunity, because less than a third of the enterprise is automated today, right? So the blue at the top shows some organizations, just like we've talked about, the early adopters, the innovators, they have gone for very full-scale automation, but they're far and few. If you start to really look at, by different markets and by penetration, there is about only a third where actually business processes or other sort of development processes have been automated. To a large extent, 2/3 still remains to be done. And I think that, to me, is the promise and the value of what automation is there that's going to sort of have a big impact. One of the things that I have observed is that over the recent past, many of these large enterprises now have a VP of automation, right? How many of you, in your companies, how many of you have someone that's sort of a senior director or a VP level person whose job title is like automation? Anyone? Okay. I see about maybe 15, 20 hands compared to the rest when people are using automation. I think that's what's going to change the penetration and impact of automation in the enterprise, right? So you can have software test automation, you can have robotic process automation, you can have infrastructure services automation. A variety of automation is going to happen. And that's being driven by someone taking a leadership role for the entire enterprise, right? And usually, I met with the VP at a very large retail company, and his title was VP of End-to-End Automation. And what is he thinking about? He's thinking about automating across the entire enterprise, how to bring a lot of different silo efforts together, how to leverage capabilities and technologies, and bring automation from a strategic perspective, not just a tactical perspective. So I think that's what's going to drive change in how enterprises automate over the course of the next 3 to 5 years. For me, actually, automation is like a 2-decade journey, right? We're all going to be hopefully around, but it's going to be where more and more things can get automated and bring a smile to our faces. So the next part is what can be automated. And again, there have been many studies done. You can probably Google this and you'll find a lot of researchers have written about it. This chart, again, is also from McKinsey, and then they actually have a dedicated team that's been studying automation. And while there are many tasks like management, like having certain skills and expertise, the 3 categories that seem to be very suitable, very eligible for automation today are all about data collection, data analysis, and data preparation, and data outcome. So that's where we're seeing a lot of what's happening, certainly, is driven by these categories. And different verticals will certainly have different levels of this type of data preparation and processing. One very interesting quote I read there's a person called Dr. Kai-Fu Lee. He's a Taiwanese person who's been an investor, researcher, invested in a lot of AI-related companies. And he had a very simple, but a very pithy quote. And he said, any job that takes less than 5 seconds to think, can be automated, right? So it's there's a lot of stuff boiled into that statement. But, to me, it's interesting, right? So, that's going to basically be some of the ways we think about what can be automated. Clearly, it also means that there are things that are not going to be automated because there are complex decisions that need to be made, and where automation is going to be something that, we need more advances in technology. So we talked about the penetration, we talked about what can be automated. Now, let's talk about, when we think about RPA, Robotic Process Automation, why is it so hot, right? Are most of you, have you heard of RPA before? Just show of hands? Okay, most of you, well, many of you have. So, Robotic Process Automation is an extremely hot category at this point in time. If you were to be following some of the companies that have been in this, there's a lot of funding, there's a lot of buzz, there's a lot of noise going on, right? But what's driving enterprises to not just do software test automation, but also do business process automation using RPA tools is very much driven by that whole customer journey, the customer transformation, and how can they improve customer experience. So it may be possible that what a company is trying to do is, how long does it take for them to process an approval of a credit card? I'm just using one example, right? Well, it's taking them 2 weeks, and by implementing RPA, if they can do it in 2 hours, is that a good thing, right? So those are the type of experiences that this type of automation can deliver. It can reduce cycle time, it improve customer experience, and enable, more revenues. Certainly, a lot of emphasis does get put on labor costs, and then certainly it's true, especially when the people involved from a labor perspective are doing repetitive tasks and maybe also prone to data error. And when there's data error, it slows things down, right? Or it perhaps has a detrimental impact on customer experience. So I think that's certainly a category. And then, we've sort of talked about how maybe manual repetitive tasks that are in typical back office or front office business processes, maybe having an impact on the business itself and the customer experience itself. So those are the challenges why we see a very significant uptick, a really significant uptick in people looking at doing RPA, implementing RPA. So let's talk about the business benefits, right? And there are many. And there's a reason why I put this chart the way it is, because if you've heard about RPA, then a lot of times people focus on just this one thing, cost savings, right? But actually there's more, right? And then, so let me pose this question to you. Suppose you gave me 1,000 rupees and I gave you 2,000 rupees back. What would you think? I mean, I'm going to give it to you, right? You probably think you were asking yourself this question, is he running for election, making false promises, right? That's sort of the nature of our doubt in our minds. How can it be true that, I'm going to give 1,000 rupees and get 2,000 rupees back? Well, what we've observed in many cases is there's a higher return beyond just cost savings when it comes to RPA, right? And then they are driven by a variety of things. So, some examples in the industry. Invoice processing was taking 4 days. Now, you roboticize or use RPA for that business process, you can actually process this in less than 2 hours. So now imagine how many invoices being processed in a week with a certain set of people, and using RPA, you can do it faster, but perhaps with less people, while the existing people can be redeployed to be doing other type of tasks. Or you can say, how long does it take to basically renew an insurance policy? Again, if it was using a lot of manual tasks, using a lot of data collected from different sources, that can be accelerated using RPA. You can reduce the number of error rates. So if you're really dealing with a lot of data that's being entered into the system, many forms, well, maybe invoices, maybe client data, maybe electronic medical information, all of that can be reduced from an error perspective and accelerate the end result. You can scale high volume transactions. So some businesses are cyclical. Maybe in certain months, the demand falls, but in other months in the year, it actually goes maybe 50x. Well, you cannot hire people fast enough to meet that need. So again, RPA can help you because of the automation aspects of it. So there are many reasons why RPA can bring a variety of tangible business benefits. This, for me, is one of the most exciting parts about RPA, right? So when it comes to other types of, for example, test automation, I think you would agree with me that, sometimes it takes a great deal of effort to go drive the business justification to make an investment in test automation, right? Sometimes it can. When it comes to RPA, what I've observed, what we've seen in the industry is it takes maybe 2 weeks to do a POC, and it takes maybe 3 months to actually be able to look at the outcome and the business results, right? So very fast, not unlike other projects where it may take 6, 9, 18 months. So an accelerated view of how an automation technology can shape a better business outcome. Now, the other part from a technology perspective that's also very interesting about RPA is that it's a very non-invasive, non-intrusive type of technology, right? You don't have to actually make a lot of changes. You can work with your legacy systems. You don't have to modernize your infrastructure. And as a result, you don't need to go buy brand new technologies, storage, servers, whatever have you, right? So it can be done in a very non-intrusive way. No complex requirements to get going. You know your business process. You can actually apply it to that and be able to implement it. You can train the system to basically leverage your experts, the skilled people, to manage exceptions. And you can cover a variety of legacy technologies, right? So not just a few. So all of these reasons allow for an RPA type of a project not to take a long period of time. You can actually say, I want to trial it, I want to POC it, I want to get going, and within a few weeks, you will actually see the results, the fruit of the work you put in. So, very positive from a business benefit perspective, but also very positive from how you can implement it from a technology perspective as well. So now let me talk a little bit about Tricentis. So some of you are familiar with us. As I mentioned, we are in the software test automation category, and we've been a leader in this category for a few years in a row. And how do we look at automation and RPA? So software test automation is our foundation. That's what we've been doing for almost 11 years, and established a very strong presence in the large enterprise market globally. We have more than 800 enterprise customers worldwide. And when we see the future, we see a broader journey for customers around automation, right? And that is, how does a customer go through a digital transformation across all their various processes, not just development and testing, but business, infrastructure services, and others. So as a result, we are now planning to deliver an RPA solution, an RPA tool, early next year in Q1. And it's an addition to what we bring to the enterprise market and to our partners worldwide, right? So it's a combination of bringing our leadership, bringing our strength in automation technology and capabilities, adding to it by doing robotic process automation, and then also completing the circle by looking at business process monitoring, right? So think about this as a very adaptive way at providing a bigger automation play for the enterprise customer, whereby they can actually use this approach to have a much broader look at how to automate the enterprise. Now, why are we doing this? So one of the things that we've been thinking about, and one of the things we've also heard from our customers, is that they want to start to leverage one common platform, one common automation platform, such that they can use it across different type of automation use cases. So if you think about software test automation as one use case, and business process automation or RPA as a different use case, they would rather leverage one single platform rather than have multiple ones. In today's world, it's actually, the observation would be that there are multiple RPA tools being used in the typical enterprise. In fact, there may be more than 2 or 3 in a typical enterprise. So we've been hearing from the customers that we think it's the right approach is how can you actually leverage that across multiple automation use cases. So that's our thinking, that's our vision, that's our mission, is to essentially enable a much bigger automation sort of play for customers who are on this digital transformation journey. So we are one of the sponsors for this event, and thank you very much for inviting us. We have a booth here as well, and if you're not familiar with these solutions, we have intelligent automated testing with Tosca. We have load testing with a product called Flood, and recently added to our portfolio with agile dev testing and Q-test. So please, when you get some time, definitely check out the booth. We have, quite a few people there, staff, to help answer any questions you might have. So I'll give you a quick flavor of how we're thinking about RPA, and use this to help at least provide you some ideas for how you can think about what's important to you when you start to think about RPA, right? So we've basically boiled this down and positioned it as our approach to RPA is about resilience, about fast time to business value, and about simplicity. So that's sort of what we're bringing to the table. So if we talk about resilient, why is that important? So compared to software test automation, in software test automation, let's say your automation run fails at 2 in the morning. Maybe you have a tool to restart it, and it'll get started at 2:05 or 2:30 a.m. Or maybe you come in the morning and get it started. When your business process automation fails, that's downtime, right? And that means people or systems are not processing your business, and it can have a major impact. So resilience is actually very, very important, right? So that's the way we put resilient first. And surrounding all of this is, does that RPA solution you're looking at, what's the breadth of technologies it covers? So for example, some of the RPA tools are focused primarily on, let's say, Oracle, or maybe just on SAP, or maybe on just Salesforce.com, or maybe just some other type of CRM application. If you're going to start to do automation, it should cover a broad range of technologies. Our expertise as Tricentis has been support for more than 120 types of technologies, right? Different types of applications, different types of browsers. So really a very broad range of technologies, and we continue to add to it. And the benefit of that is how automated can you have your business process be? There's a concept in RP about an attended robot and an unattended robot, right? An unattended robot can run by itself. An attended robot is something you need to deploy on a system or a PC of a person that's actually going to be providing some input. So maybe it's your call center person, and he or she will be looking at some of the things that's being provided in that process. So the more technologies you can cover, the higher the degree of the automation, and therefore the higher the degree of an unattended robot, right? Or the more unattended robots you can generate. And in general, if you have a process you're automating, the more it can run on its own, the better it's going to be from your perspective. So high degree of unattended robots becomes important. And then finally, low maintenance and low downtime. right? So let's say you automated a business process, and the next day, maybe you're using Google Suite, or maybe using Salesforce.com, or maybe you're using some other application, and the application vendor made a change to their application. Now, what is the impact on what you actually automated? Is it going to basically throw it off? Because if you did UI automation or screen scraping, and a field change from a location at the top of the screen to the middle of the screen, that may potentially break what you've automated. So, how long will it now take for you to adapt to that change? And so because of the way we think about it, because of the way we've looked at automation and object-based automation and model-based automation, we are very resilient to those types of changes, right? So it's very important. How quickly can you adapt? So that's all going into the whole concept of resiliency, right? So I think that's very important. The next category would be fast time to business value, right? So you can actually get a POC going, and that's great. But then we've broken it down to multiple stages. How do you design RPA for a particular business process? How do you implement it? Meaning get the robots up and running. How is the execution of the robot? How many tasks can be done? How fast can they run? How do you maintain it? We just talked about that. How easy does it adapt to change or not? And then finally, how can you scale your implementation? So each of these has a significant impact on the time to business value. And ultimately, you're doing this because you want business value, right? So with our approach, and I've sort of put a comparison here, we've heard back from our customers. We are fundamentally providing the fastest time to business value in comparison. And then finally, the simple part is, a comparison of a typical RPA tool that uses code and scripts and programming, which is very arcane, maybe okay for developers, but it's not going to be okay for a business user, right? And what we bring is model-based automation that actually separates the business data from the technical information. This allows a business user to actually have something they can understand. So, design for a business user. So those would be the three main differences, right? Resiliency, fast time to business value, and simplicity. So I don't have too much time right now, so I'm not going to go into all these details, but there are several case studies on our Tricentis website that talk about success stories with a bank, insurance company, telco. There's quite a few different types of customers that have been using our existing product to do RPA. Of course, we have our new RPA solution purpose-built for that coming pretty soon, like I said, in Q1 next year. So different types of use cases and different success stories. So the last sort of idea I want to leave with you is, you are all many of you are practitioners in automation. So if you think about RPA, a lot of people who are sort of new to this will say, okay, what does it take to design and implement a robot, right? I think that's probably how their journey starts. And they're going to look at different tools and say, oh, this is actually much easier to use, to lay out a workflow. People that are experienced in automation, like many of you, say it's not just about designing something. How important and how easy is it to maintain it? How can it adapt to changes? Well, that becomes quite important because, as we discussed, RPA is not something you do for a quarter. It's going to actually be true for, the journey from an automation perspective. And then finally, I think the next level of expertise people that are experienced at this can bring, it's not just about designing and maintaining, but can you scale and reuse automation? So this is where that common platform comes in, right? If I already use Tricentis for software test automation, and I developed some proprietary test cases for testing SAP, well, I can actually apply that for using, for my actually production data in SAP as well. So there is leverage, right? So I think, just want to leave that idea that it's not just about designing, but also maintaining and scaling and reusing what you're doing with automation. So to close it out, we have an upcoming sort of 2 conferences in India next year. and you're all invited to help join and bring your ideas and expertise to them. So there's one in Bangalore next year on the 14th of June, and there's another one in Pune on the 12th of June. We're expecting close to about 1,000+ people at each of them. Certainly would love to have you. So I wanted to make you aware of that. And then finally, just to close, as I mentioned, we do have a booth right outside here as you enter to the left, exit to the left. And wanted to make sure you're aware that there are many certainly products and solution demonstrations, as well as many prizes you can take advantage of. There's a tweet hashtag that we've come up with that you can hopefully take advantage of as well. So please take some time to be able to look at what questions we may be able to answer for you. So again, finally, thank you again for this opportunity. I'm excited that I got a chance to share some ideas, and I wish you the best in your automation journeys. Thank you.